Welcome to the Ophthalmology Experience, where we discuss everything about ophthalmology, but we focus more on the business side. I'm your host, Guido Piquet. We feature conversations with industry leaders, practice administrators, and physicians about the challenges of running and growing successful practices. The Ophthalmology Experience is produced and powered by Boost Patients. Today, we're joined by Lawson Boothe. He's a developer, entrepreneur, all around cool guy. And he also is the founder of Revival Health, a company launched in 2021. His mission was to make a real difference in the world by empowering medical providers and their staff the time to be able to focus more on their patients. This week, we're diving into the topic of AI and specifically AI automation in healthcare. It's Lawson. Thanks for joining us, and excited to have you here. So let's jump in.
All right, man. Let's do it.
Yeah. So how have you been?
Good. I've been at a conference and then had Thanksgiving, so I'm catching up and recovering. But I can't complain. All things are really good.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you. I know we got the opportunity to see each other at the conference a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if my battery is recharged by those things or depleted. I think they're probably more so depleted.
Yeah.
um, I play an extrovert, but I'm really an introvert.
Yeah.
And then after a while, it's like it's time for a break.
Well,
So do you do the? I know how many of those shows do you do per year?
we do at least six. Only the ophthalmology ones, and then the practice management system ones that focus on ophthalmology. So it's and so typically around six or so. Maybe we'll stretch to eight, but that's and maybe eventually we'll get into some retina stuff. But right
Yeah,
now it's kind of big corny ones.
I think that's why I'm on this side of the fence, because I don't know if I have the patience for doing that many shows, and that's
But
probably a small number compared to a lot.
oh yeah, I mean I'm
Yeah,
as you probably know, I'm also an introvert. So
yeah.
they take all of my energy to be there, and I come home and need to recharge for a couple days.
Well, maybe as time goes on, you can develop a Lawson virtual bot or
I need
virtual.
that. Like,
Yeah, you can just
I need
set
one
your
that's
monitor.
extroverted and funny and outgoing. All those good things.
I'm sure you could figure it out. You just feed it some data of different personalities and then set up the monitor at the booth.
Yeah.
Um, well, let's get into the topic today. So you're the CEO of Revival Health, and you focus and tell me, correct me if I'm wrong on anything that I say, but I think you focus on more so the business side of healthcare and specifically the business side of ophthalmology and help to automate tasks. So can you just describe a little better than I did, just kind of what you do and what you focus on?
Yeah. So we are 100% focused on automating, repetitive, time-consuming tasks in medical practices. So, if you look at a typical medical practice, or at least so far as I've been doing it, probably 30% of the administrative tasks across, everything from the front desk to the I guess scribes or even doctors. There's probably 30% of that that's automatable, and we focus on automating those. And our business is really based on building those automations, but then maintaining those, making sure they run and are working, and yeah, so that's what we do.
And how long? So it's been just a few years since you officially founded the company, but I'm sure you've seen, even before that, you've seen differences in how you might approach automation, and probably just in the last couple of years, you've seen a lot of differences. So what does it look like in the past? What have there been? What advances, I guess, would be the best question you've seen of the past few years in
Yeah,
what you're doing?
yeah. So and maybe I should start with my background, right? So I started by building a patient engagement platform in medical, and ended up getting to look in the guts of most of the practice management systems, and that platform did all kinds of patient reminders and notifications, and and there's an element of automation in that, and so um, I started, that was back in 2010 when we started doing, automated patient reminders and in many ways that was, maybe one of the first, what I would call automations out there. As 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 that business progressed and as we, my partner and I ended up selling that to a different company, but I started looking around at other technologies that I thought would be helpful to my customer base, and as I had had served, those customers, I guess I understood the business a lot more
Yeah.
than I did when I'd started the other business, and so we started to play around with something called RPA, which stands for robotic process automation, and RPA is I call it often a souped up macro if you've seen Excel, but it's
Mhm.
something that lets you mimic the clicks and the typing and the data entry, and but it's, I mean, it's very programmatic, right? There's not a lot of, like, it's not like a, chat GPT, like a large language model, which is kind of doing stuff more on its own. It's very like, do this, do that, do this. And so that's what we started with. And I started playing around with that kind of technology back in 2019. And, this business spun out in 2021. And so that's been a big deal. Or I think it's a big deal there's a lot of opportunity in medical for that. The cost keeps coming down on it. It's becoming affordable. Um, so that's, I'm saying there's a lot of uses for that. There's something called computer vision that is, OCR used to be able to read a, um, read a PDF or something,
Mhm.
but computer vision has really gotten advanced where you can read documents and train, train a model, train something on how to read a document correctly. So we use some computer vision. Um, and that's also gotten affordable. I mean, one of my as I think about one of the challenges I have to do is find technology and wait for them to be affordable so that we can implement them in a practice. But those are some things I think we're using today. We're starting to play around with using some LLMs, which are kind of like large language models for ChatGPT and practices, and how we could use those and but they're pretty, we're just getting to that, right? So
Right.
so and and then I think about stuff in the future. um, you know, I, I I think I've showed you this before. I think there'll be a day where we're able to train a model on, being able to do the clicks and the typing
Mhm.
and some of the things you do with RPA in a site. We've been playing around with one recently, but it takes like super slow. It would, yeah, it's not cost effectively there yet, but maybe 2 3 years they'll be there. We can do something like that as well.
So you said RPA. Can you describe that a little bit more for
Yeah, well,
listeners?
like what robotic process automation is.
Mhm.
It's literally um, it's literally writing a computer program that does exactly what a human would do,
Mhm.
step by step, right? So if you can do something on if you can write an SOP and it's done on a computer program, you can, and it's standardized, you can typically write, or done on a computer screen and it's standardized, you can typically write a program to do exactly what a person wants to do. So it'll log in, it will type in data, it will click around, it will navigate the website. Um, and yeah, so it's a yeah, it's a computer program running through a screen or running on a computer, just like a person would be.
And the reason I ask you that too is because I think
Hmm.
people that are looking for solutions need to really understand the difference, because
Hmm.
a lot of the solutions that she work on are probably more in line with that in terms of building a bot as opposed to some learning model where
Hmm.
as it starts to do those clicks and those models, then it would be making decisions and in theory
Hmm.
being smarter. And so is that true? I mean,
Yeah. We aren't using any agents yet. We're playing around with an agent right now, where it would help us maybe read like a note that a doctor has written or a scribe has written in a thing, and help us, you know, standardize that text, and then still use. Oh yeah, right now we are only using bots, which
mhm,
is probably more like an RPA type thing. We aren't using any type of agents. in anything we do. Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
think about, I guess, the possibilities for that, because a lot of stuff that we do is
Hmm.
very repeatable.
Hmm.
It's the thing that most of us in the
Hmm.
practice administration game has dreamed about providing a robot to do that, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm sure everyone listening that's been involved in a practice at some point or other has said, God, I wish I could just have a robot to do that because they don't call in sick. They don't miss clicks. They don't make mistakes. And
Yeah.
so when we start looking at opportunities for automations, I mean, there's probably a ton of things that you could really figure out how to, if you figured out how to train that bot to do it, that could really save you some time. And so, I think part of the challenge, like when you and I talk, it's like, well, what 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 do we do? Like, what direction do we take this thing? Because there's a lot of
Yeah.
different opportunities for us to automate.
Uh-huh.
But can you just talk? I think it'll be helpful for anyone listening to just hear about some of the things that you've done to this point in ophthalmology, so they can start kind of getting their wheels turning about what they can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we started with doing numerous tasks around vision insurance, which are, tends to be a little lower paying type of insurance, higher work. And we've done everything from checking eligibility to pulling authorizations. And that's, the bot will physically log into the websites and
Mhm.
get the data and check it just like a person does, and then put it back into the practice management system exactly according to the process or standards of the practice, right? So if you're on ModMed or NextTech or NextGen, it will put the authorization number in the right plot spot. Maybe there's a note that needs to go in a certain spot in the appointment, but it will do the entire process just like your front desk staff would likely do it.
Yeah.
For we've done some claim filing, which is similar, right, where we're grabbing some claims and filing those and putting the data back directly in the website, and also done payment posting where we actually take the PDF or standard PDF and go and post the payment back in the practice management system, just like a person. And so there's we've done versions of that for you know posting collections and checks and credit cards and a number of different things that are all in those same genres, but those are some examples.
Yeah. And a lot of that, what you mentioned, as you get bigger and you get more patients, you have to scale up. And typically you have to scale up in your staff, right?
Hmm.
And one of the biggest challenges for people that are managing practices, we're trying to keep the costs down because the amount of money coming in is not growing as a percent of our cost. Our costs are
Hmm.
growing faster than our revenues. So I think it makes sense. I mean, do you think some of these things are going to eventually replace people, or are they just going to help people do what they do better?
That's a great question. I think there's going to be two types of AI or automations. One is a one is going to replace jobs that are being done that are very standardized will be done by a computer. Now, I think that what I think that means though is that a person will still need to watch. I think of it like a factory. A person still needing you're still gonna have people who understand that process, understand what the machine is doing or the bot is doing, or um, and being able to check the bot and work the exceptions or the bad widgets or whatever. Then
Hmm.
so I don't think that so I think some jobs will not exist anymore. But I think they will be transformed into, you know, a different version of that job. Um, with other AI, I think it will just make more productive people better, right? So I might have a tool at my fingertips that goes and, you know, I often use this example, looks up, you know, I tell it I need to go to a conference and it goes and looks up a bunch of flight options and hotel options, returns those back to me.
Hmm.
I tell it to go book, I don't like this option to go find something else and comes back and then it I go tell it to go book it, right? So that saved me some crazy amount of time. And those things I think will exist in medical as well, right? There'll be ways to just make really talented people more efficient and effective in what they do. Um, so I don't. So long as I don't think it's gonna. I don't think we're gonna necessarily reduce the number of people we have, other than maybe making them more efficient, likely, and potentially changing the way they work.
We'll only replace those few that we want to replace. um, have you seen? So when you've started to go through this process with
Uh,
different administrators and just different practices, have you seen anything that surprised you, or have you seen anything that they think that they're going to do, or things that worked out really well or didn't? I'm just curious of what you're seeing, because you're actually you're able to
yeah,
have these conversations with these people.
yeah. I mean, I can tell you what some of the things we've learned, and some of the mistakes we've made. Because we all make them. As we continue to build automations, we the way we build them, we've learned that right now, at least the types of things we do, it's harder for us to do things that require real time,
Hmm.
something to happen instantaneous. Just the tools and technologies we use, and they can be a little fragile. Just making something happen instantaneous has been challenging for us. We've tried to do some things where like mimic an interface that needed, um, piece of maybe a system that didn't talk to each other, one like a check-in system where it didn't flow through the other check-in system perfectly, and we've had to. It hasn't been that hasn't been as effective as something like an eligibility authorization or claim filing, where we can do that work in a 24-hour period and turn it around. Um, so that's certainly one thing I think we've learned in terms of what we do. I think that as technology advances and we continue to get better, the real time stuff will become more and more doable. It just is, for lots of reasons, it hasn't made economic sense for us to tackle some of those things yet. The other things I think I've learned are, as I've worked with practices, and is that having a champion or having somebody own and understand these processes is really, really important. And I think it's going to be important for the future too, right? Having somebody really know your eligibility authorization process, or your claim filing process, or your you know payment posting process, or how you um, do your collection process, or
Hmm.
um, get your get your retina drug, um, you know inventory management figured out. So all of those things, someone knowing that and having that, an understanding of that, and documenting that, and you know the more people, when someone has that, it makes our lives really a lot easier in building automations and helping our customers be successful. And I think that's likely to be I think that's a probable path, for the future, where people are maybe specializing a little more and really understanding something as they
Hmm.
watch some of the technology do that. Um, and then I think I've learned, I think it's hard for people to imagine what can be automated as well. Sometimes I think it can be hard for people, for everyone to say, oh, this part of my job could potentially be automated to free me up, or this process or this task is is something that could maybe be more efficient. And I don't know. So maybe there's some. If I'm thinking about an ophthalmology practice, or even a medical practice in general, maybe trying to help my people understand those things, or teach them how to do those, how to think maybe a little differently, could be valuable. And even thinking about how they might use some tools, like some AI tools. You and I have talked about that before, on how maybe some training and some training around some of those things could be really valuable and important for practices.
A quick break brought to you by Boost Patients. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a physician, a practice manager, or maybe even a marketing manager of an ophthalmology practice. And you're always looking to grow your practice. You want to bring in new patients. And so you tend to think we need to spend more money on marketing, do more about SEO, website, digital ads, or etc. But we're not so sure. We've mystery shopped dozens and dozens and dozens of practices, and we think there's a major challenge that you have in terms of actually following up with the leads you have. We don't actually believe that you need to spend more money driving new patient leads. We think you need to assess and evaluate how you're actually following up with the leads you're getting and maximizing the marketing spend that you're spending. So if you want to evaluate how your practice is doing this and discuss how you could follow up with your new patient leads more effectively to increase consults and drive up surgery volume, head over to boostpatients.com and book a quick chat with me, and we would love to help you. Thanks, and back to the show.
Yeah, you touched on a couple things that I want to expand upon. So you said process experts.
Mhm.
And I think the other challenge, and we've kind of talked about this before as well, but the other challenge is that likely different people do it different ways. And I'm
Mhm.
sure you've seen that. And so for you to build, a bot that's going to help automate some part of that workflow, and then the next guy or gal comes to you and says, hey, let's do this same thing, but let's do it a little differently. And then the next person says, let's do it a little differently. I see that as a challenge as well, because then it's like, what direction do you take these learning models based up all these different workflows, and
Mhm.
the bots and the bots that you're going to build? Because
Mhm.
I think there's, especially when we have conversations in different peer groups and different meetings that we go to, and you can find like there's this one practice who does this one thing really well, and they got a guru here. There's just another one that has somebody else who's really well. So I think there's a huge opportunity for collaboration so that we can form these, you know, I guess AI think tanks of automation, I guess, for lack of a better word, so
Mhm.
that we can figure out how to maybe do things a little better and maybe learn from each other. So we can say, hey, let's look at your SOP for filing this vision claim. Well, maybe you could do a little more efficiently because this other person has another idea for how to do that. And then we build a bot to do that, and then everybody wins. I think there are big opportunities there, and maybe we should think about forming a group or getting started.
I think it's a great idea. Yeah, it's funny. I think there'll be like, let's take something I know quite a bit about, like the vision insurance stuff, right? I think that, yeah, like if there's likely some best practices that as I've done this enough, right, across
Mhm.
quite a few practices, there are likely some best practices that I didn't know when I started, that I've since seen as I've worked with all these groups, uh, that I yeah that would probably is the most, or in that area is probably the most efficient. I also think there's always going to be some small part of that that probably needs a unique customization for the practice,
Mhm.
right? But there's probably a best practice that says you should always likely do it this way,
Mhm.
right? Um, to pull to, I mean, on the vision insurance authorization one, I think I've seen as the best practices. Should probably pull material off. This is ophthalmology only. You should probably pull material off, an exam off, put it, put it in a super obvious place in the for your front desk staff, and we don't have to get into the details, but there's probably something super specific about that that's the best practice, and then maybe a small nuance part that would be different across practices. So I think that's a super interesting idea, how that would happen and what that would look like and how you guys would collaborate across that. But I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, you can take that information and build a super bot, a combination of everybody that joined, and it just becomes this big transformer. Takes over the
It's
world.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, it's
uh,
interesting. Yeah.
And then you also said training. So I want to touch real quick on that too, because I think another challenge I hear of people going into the world of automation is people they just don't know what they don't know. I mean, there's so much out there. It's so new. There's
Uh-huh.
so many different tools out there that people can use to help automate things. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like your iPhone. It can do all these cool things, but unless somebody teaches you how to do it or how to use it, or you have the ability or capacity that you're more inclined to be able to use these tools, how do we really take advantage of all these great tools out there? So how do you see your company or just in general, how can we fill that knowledge gap of people trying to figure out how to use the tools or where to go next?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I don't know if I know the true answer to this, but I have some ideas. And some of it's what we're trying to do in our own company. I think I think you have to create a system that rewards innovation or rewards finding these types of things and 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 somehow encourages it, right?
You mean
So
like a culture of innovation in your
yeah, I mean it
organization?
could be, I mean it could be a culture like that. It could be monetary. I mean, I could see there being monetary, like you could
Uh-huh.
create, I could see there being some monetary benefits for that. I don't know the right. I mean, I can tell you we have a 5 minute, and I'm not saying we're doing this great, but we have a 5 minute part of every meeting right now where we're trying to think about our weekly meetings where we're trying to think about new tools or new ways of doing things. And and if someone like comes up with something amazing in our business, I mean, we don't have any type of formal policy, but we'll give people like a, I mean, yeah, it's not like a,
Yeah,
we'll reward that, right? And
yeah.
for those type of things. So I don't know. Yeah, once again, I don't know if that translates to ophthalmology, but I do think that making that, recognizing that that's the future, and
Mhm.
then somehow building that into your culture is probably be a wise step for most folks, given
Yeah,
where technology is
yeah.
going, right? So
Yeah, we can just say, "Hey, we'll bonus you if you can figure out a way to automate your job away, then we'll give you a one-time bonus." I I think
but
that tends to be the fear, though. I think you said
yeah,
it right? You said it earlier, is that people think that they're gonna lose their jobs or whatever, but there's a lot of higher priority things, in my opinion, that people can do that are not getting done today, right?
yeah, I have had one. So we have 30 something customers, and I've only had one of them that has like done a any type of reduction related to anything we do.
Yeah.
Every single one of them have and yeah, and yeah, I don't, and every
Yeah.
single one of them have like repurposed, um, and made their people more efficient and better. So I think, yeah, and every customer I talk to, and you probably know this way better than me, Guido, is not, how do I say this, is looking for really good people and wants nothing more than to
Yes.
free their really good
Yeah,
people
yeah,
up, right? So
for
they're not
sure.
they're not trying to like get rid of team members. So
Absolutely.
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you can automate a bot to help us find good people, then that would be awesome too. For
Yeah,
sure.
I do even think, as I think about, like, as I've been thinking about the front desk, and we'll see what unfolds in the future. But I do think that, I do think it is likely to create a better patient experience, right? If we can automate, like, because you think about a person that like is really personable and great with people, they
Mhm.
probably aren't going to be as task oriented, wanting to sit behind and do a bunch of typing. So I like to think that it's going to improve the patient experience as well as these things continue to roll out.
And then potentially help those team members who are giving that experience to be able to have a little bit more personal touch with the
Hmm.
patients. Because I think, everyone that's been in healthcare or ophthalmology has been part of some instance where a patient at some point in that journey, we did
Hmm.
everything perfect. We had a great phone call. Patient
Hmm.
came in and had good experience. The doctor was awesome. The technician was
Hmm.
great. But then they get a bill for something because we missed a box whenever we were checking eligibility, and the whole thing just goes to hell, right?
Hmm.
So can we take things like that and figure out how to give our people tools to make them better so that we can make it more personal. Because I think some opponents of automation will mention in-person, being impersonal as a
Mhm.
objection to going to automation, to say, oh no, we need to be able to put our hands on this and put our hands on the patient and whatever else, which I agree with. I agree with that. But I feel like if you only see it from that perspective, then you might be missing out on the opportunity to be able to elevate the experience even more, like you said.
Yeah, no, I think that is a great example. Like, I really do think that there will be a eligibility or authorization agent or bot that does that job really well and calls out the or, and we're, and I should say we're kind of building, we continue to build parts of that, right? But
Mhm.
that does that job, in particular the easy stuff really well, calls out the challenging stuff or more difficult stuff for hopefully an expert or experts to work on, and ideally tease that up for your team interacting with your patients to make it really obvious and help them serve the patient well. I think that is a highly probable outcome if if an organization embraces that and does that.
Agreed. Let's keep trying to rack our brains and continue to figure it out.
Yeah.
Let's Another objection, or maybe I should say concern, I hear too is about data privacy.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I guess if you have any potential clients or existing clients, or really anyone who starts to raise concern about data privacy, how would you answer that? How should we approach this as we go to automations in healthcare to make sure that patients' data is secure and that it's not being shared in places that it's not? Because there's certain instances of automations, and we're even working in a beta for AI Scribe. And
Mhm.
when you put those in the consents, people read the consents, and just because I think they just don't know or have concerns about it, or maybe some people don't handle security, they get afraid. And there's some people say, I don't trust my information being put into the system, or wherever they think that that information goes to be shared. So how do you, when people um, ask you questions about data security and just show concern, how do you typically answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing I would say is that I think vendor, yeah, I think vendor selection matters on those type of things. And I think, if I'm sitting in your shoes, I think, um, yeah, I think a little bit of due diligence and a little bit of questions on that is probably a good idea.
Hmm.
And I also think, I think I always get concerned if people tell me, don't ever tell me the risks, right? If they tell me everything is like perfect, there's no risk, then I think that is like that
Red
should be
flag.
something that a red flag, right?
Yeah.
So I think every software vendor and every person doing anything at technology has some amount of risk of that. We work, at least in our business, we work really hard to minimize that by having, there's both security and HIPAA, which are
Hmm.
not the same thing, but we at least try to. I told we have a 5 minute thing for innovation. We have a 5 minute thing for HIPAA and security too, and every like
Hmm.
in every meeting, and try to make it core to what we do. But I would be the first to tell you that there is, people make mistakes and there are risks and things that happen, and so at least in our world, we work really hard to pick to be very mindful about where we put data, where we store data, the vendors we use, that we have the right agreements in place, and and candidly, not like the fewer places we can put it, the the better. Um, and but I do think that those. I mean, the only way to not have that risk is probably to go off the
To not
grid
do it.
and to go off the
Yeah.
grid and
Yeah.
get rid of your social security card or whatever and
Yeah.
live in the woods or whatever, right? So and pretty soon, I guess now they can probably see you from a satellite if you're even doing that. I don't know. So,
Yeah,
but
sometimes I wish I could say, which I don't. It's like, you know what? If your data's out there anyway. Just get over it. Like, but no, I think it's definitely a concern, and it's something that we should all take seriously. And I'm glad you said vendor selection, because I think that's important too. You want, I think if you're on the practice side and you're interviewing potential companies, I think it's okay to ask, like, what are you doing? Show us how you protect data, because
mm,
you're going to get those questions from patients, and I think you should be prepared to answer that question and get that information from your vendor, right?
I mean, the other thing I would say that I think is, I don't know, as I think about data security is just, yeah, I mean, I'm heading. Yeah. Maybe you'll edit this out, but sometimes I think people think that keeping something in
Uh-huh.
control, like there's this belief that if I keep it local or keep it in house and you know
That it's
only in
secure.
my
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's going to be more secure
yeah.
and um, yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that you still have in some ways. I feel like there's more risk in trying to maintain your own network and your own
Yeah.
security and trying to keep yeah keep that out can be very difficult. That's a but probably a separate discussion here. So
And I think that there's
yeah,
something to be said for scale too. If you have somebody who that's what they do, well, they're
yeah,
more likely going to protect data than the IT guy that's got your servers with all your patient data in the closet.
mm,
I mean, so
mm,
sometimes I think practices need to make that distinction and decision of when to work with companies who have scale and that can help them, versus trying to do it all in house or afraid of connecting and sharing with other people, because their fear of compliance issues with patient data. I think at the end of the day, you just got to do your due diligence and do what's right, follow the rules. There's playbooks for this kind of thing. I'm literally, before this call, I was just sitting in our security risk assessment, our annual risk assessment, going through all our policies and procedures, and there's playbooks of that you can go to a company and as a practice, and you can follow it and try to do all the things that they say you should be doing. So I
mm,
think it's all you can do. Do what you're supposed to do, but then try to bring in some cool and interesting tools and pray to God that
mhm.
it's not you. Because the way I look at it too, if you're like, when I see these data breaches, like, if you're the Department of Defense and you get a data breach, it spends like, the kind of budget
Yeah,
they have for data security, then we, the little guys, have no chance at all. It's like,
yeah,
maybe we're just
yeah,
little enough to where they don't care about us and they don't look for us.
yeah, Ye- yeah. And you probably know this, Peter, but at least my experience in this, and I think you probably have more years than me, but it's still the little things that typically cause people the problems, right? Like humans making a mistake, putting something somewhere where they shouldn't, or
Yeah.
downloading an email they shouldn't, or I would I don't know what the statistics on that, but at least anything I've ever been part of or had to do, it's typically a human making something that was making a silly mistake,
Yeah.
right? Versus someone hacking in, or at least in my no, versus someone hacking into something or doing so.
So you just come full circle and made the case for a bot.
That wasn't the goal there, but that was me just thinking
Yeah.
about where most of the problems I'm aware of have come from. So.
So I said earlier, we focus on the business side of ophthalmology.
Mhm,
Part of that is trying to understand ROI on these
mhm,
investments that we make. So let's talk about automations in terms of ROI, because yes, you want to do AI. A lot of people are doing AI because they just want to be left out in the cold, because everyone's doing some form of AI. but
mhm.
but I think people should focus on things that have tangible returns. Have you had the opportunity to work on projects where you've seen some really good tangible returns for some of your clients, or maybe somebody else that you worked with?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got one customer who I want to say he's doubled his providers in the last few years and hasn't hired a single new revenue cycle team member, right? He'll tell you, I think he'll tell you it's not just our company, but it's a number of things he's done that help them, help them be more efficient. But I don't know what the ROI on that for him is, but it's got to be decent.
Yep.
And for us, at least I have the couple theses or beliefs I have, and I may be wrong on some of these, but right now stuff is moving so fast. Like technology is moving so fast that
Mhm.
I feel like if you're not seeing an ROI kind of my rule of thumb is a year and a half or a year, maybe it's two, but it's got to be short uh, in implementing something, then it's probably not worth doing right now. So for us, or the rule of thumb I have right now is if we can't get you an ROI in under really us and the customer an ROI in under a year, it's just tough to probably something better we can find
Mhm.
for our customers. And I don't I don't know. We'll see. I don't anticipate that changing, right? I think the cost of technology, I mean, as this stuff rolls out, technology is always most expensive in the beginning and tends to come down pretty dramatically. So
Mhm.
I think a lot of this stuff is going to get more and more affordable for people to use and implement.
Okay, well, I'm going to hold you to that when we talk about our next project together.
The stuff you and I are talking about, I think is well under a year if we ever get
Yeah.
there. So yeah.
So I'm a practice manager. I've come across this podcast, and I made it to this point. I didn't get bored out of my mind, and I've been listening to this. what what is if if I think if you don't have experience with it, it can feel daunting. Like, what would you say is the next step for a practice who wants to look into automations? Do they is it as simple as going to ChatGPT and using it for some of their workflows, or should they contact a vendor, or should they get very specific? What would you, if you were just giving them advice, what would you say to do next?
What would I say? I would tell them two things. I would say um, for somehow start using some tools like 5 minutes a day or something, like find some tools. The BAA on AI tools is important, right? So find one that you can, you either is not, that doesn't, you're either not putting PHI in it, or you have one where you can put PHI in it, right? And um, start using some of those low cost tools and trying to create them with your team and get them used to using them and thinking about them. I think that'd be probably my first piece of advice. And then my second piece of advice would be start thinking about your workflows differently, right? Start thinking about how you document these workflows and create SOPs and standardize them, and how you um yeah and how you might say you might how you might be have to you might be changing the way your team works over the coming years, and the more you can document and standardize and understand that, the better positioned you'll be to take advantage of things like this. So those would be my two
Yeah.
pieces of advice.
And is there anything you can see coming down the road, like 10 years, 5, 10 years, 15 years into the future, other than uh, Skynet and Terminator and all that? Um,
Oh man. Yeah.
anything you think is going to change dramatically within a shorter period of time? Because that's relatively short, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe, Guido, I really do believe that 30%, I mean, maybe it's high as 50%, but that 30% is going to be automated within 10 years, for most practices, right? And
Do you think we'll
and
start? Do you think it'll leap into thinking for people at some point?
I
Like,
mean,
or or at least flagging you, like you're about to, you did these things, and it's like, well, did you really mean to do that? Like
I,
autocorrect.
I mean, I do. I mean, obviously, the major EMR vendors coming out with these AI scribes that are going to be working right next to you, right? and doing a lot of this stuff. And I think, yeah, I think there's likely to be some of that. And then I think there's likely to be, other jobs that are going to be like I guess and I don't know, once again, I have no idea, but I mean, ultimately, I think there may be an eligibility agent or these
Uh-huh.
different agents that do these jobs, right?
Yeah.
And it's like your factory work. It's like your machine in the factory, right?
Yeah.
Except
Yeah.
it's your tire machine, except it's your eligibility agent or your, I don't know, I'm trying to even know your collection, your collections agent that's kind of been trained or works for you. And,
Mhm.
and it's just like, you're building your own factory. It just happens to be a medical office is how I think, where I think of it like.
Yeah. I just came up as we were talking. I just came up with an idea, and if somebody listens to this and they want to collaborate, let me know. I think we have Grammarly connected to our stuff, and it's watching you type. It should
Uh-huh.
be real time, trying to
Mhm.
figure out sentiment and tone, because
Mhm.
I see a lot of miscommunication in emails and results
Mhm.
in inefficiencies. Like if you're about to blast your staff or say something you shouldn't say, it's like, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Do you really mean
Yeah.
to say that? Do
Yeah.
you want to hit
You know,
send?
I could have used that this weekend. I kind of like shot off something when I got a little
Yeah.
heated about,
Yeah.
and I should have stopped, right? So,
Yeah. We're human.
yeah.
Um, Well, Austin, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. Hopefully, the next project we can work on is we can get something to help us with our affliction. Maybe we can give us some hair on this thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, as you said, I think we'll just create avatars for ourselves
yeah, you won't know what
that are
anybody looks like. Yeah, we're all gonna look like Brad
yeah.
Pitt.
Yeah.
uh,
It's funny.
we sent my daughters. We sent this. We usually send each other. They call it fit check, where we all send each other
Uh-huh.
pics throughout the day. And
Yeah.
one of ours like, "Oh, you're looking old," but she said it like in a sad way. And after that, I sent like a Snapchat back with a guy with a chiseled jaw, and I was like, "I took care of that." Oh man.
That's funny.
Well, thanks again, Lawson. I just want to say, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and I think we should have you back and some point in the future. You can talk about all the things you've learned,
Yeah.
and we can help some of these practice administrators get ahead of the game.
All right, man. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'd also like
Talk to you soon.
thank the listeners for joining us today. If you want to keep up with this podcast and the interesting conversations with our guests, don't forget to subscribe and please share us with your friends on social media. Another shout out to Boost Patients for producing the podcast. Uh, Boost helps ophthalmology practices get more new patients without spending a dime on their marketing. If you want to learn more, you can go to boostpatients.com or check out the show notes. All right, hang in there, ophthalmology gurus. We'll get through this experience together. Have a great week.